I have a theory in my head about what the backrooms are and where they came from. One I haven't really heard anywhere else. I'd like to share it with you. As I'm sure you all know, Kane Pixels' Backrooms, to me one of the greatest YouTube series of all time, takes a single meme image and expands it into a vast universe of hidden horror and dance lore. The rules, the unsolved mysteries, the meticulous atmosphere, every frame is packed with details, clues and connections that keep us theorizing and coming back. And now, with the feature film in the works, it's only getting bigger. I've watched this series multiple times and I want to add a few theories to the conversation. Not claiming exclusive knowledge, just observations I haven't heard anywhere else. Today, we'll talk about how Async is tied to the backrooms, what their general properties are, what the entities might be, and what happened to Peter Tench. Let's get started. If you watched the full Backrooms series on Kane Pixels' channel, and I'm guessing you've seen at least a few, you've likely asked yourself, what are the backrooms really? What's their backstory? And who exactly is Async, the company that we see owning or at least researching the backrooms? Let's outline a rough timeline and connect clues sprinkled across the videos. Yes, there is big mystery around everything and plenty of theories, but here's my view on what the backrooms are, how they came to exist, and which properties we get to experience. In the video Prototype, set in 1982, we see a lab test rig operating under Oak Ridge National Laboratory research, several conical devices arranged in a circle focusing on a small shiny sphere at the center. The machine powers up, a ball of light expands, engulfing the object, and then the object is gone. This setup instantly reminded me of Tron from 1982, a device that digitizes real-world objects created by a large tech company, at that time Encom. The main character, Kevin Flynn, gets digitized and experiences the inside of a computer as a human program. If you haven't seen it, I can highly recommend it. The visual effects were groundbreaking for the time. I see parallels between Tron and the backrooms, especially given the late 70s, early 80s pop cultural moment when computers felt limitless, a time of fantasy and anything's possible optimism. Think, for example, Back to the Future or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And also that reoccurring trope of a huge tech company that's ominous, unethical, or at least greedy. It makes sense to me that Kane Pixel may have drawn inspiration here. In the Backrooms universe, Async finds a way to digitize real-world objects and store them on some kind of electronic device. To be fair, the actual device storing the backrooms hasn't been shown. I haven't found clues revealing where the data is physically kept yet. The early experiments are small. Then, experiment by experiment, they progress. Async sees potential and looks for a way to monetize, big time. After years of research, they achieve a major success. By creating the portal, the threshold, they establish a transition between the digital and the real, allowing physical access to whatever is stored inside the backrooms. In one video, First Contact, we witness a first breakthrough. The system reads out room outlines, walls, corridors, spreading from the threshold. This might be the first time Async manages to manifest their digital space into a real, navigable space. Not just digitizing individual objects, but forming an actual space they can utilize. Why do I think the backrooms were purposefully created by Async in the 70s and 80s? It's their appearance. If the backrooms had existed before Async and were simply discovered, why would they look like endless yellow wall office spaces? An ancient environment might resemble caves, ruins, or something fitting its original era. The yellow wallpaper is very of its time for Async's research period. Familiar, commercial, marketable. As shown in another video, Presentation, Async aims to utilize the backrooms as a multi-purpose space, private and commercial, with a bright future and endless possibilities. Their motive is crystal clear and also noble: solve humanity's demand for space amid an ever-growing population and industry. Imagine effectively infinite space, storage, commercial expansion, even a place to dispose of toxic or nuclear waste. Of course, the tech needs years to mature, but eventually they're successful. Not long after, Async begins human expeditions to explore and assess safety for their plans. This whole story starts in an era when computers and technology still invited wild possibilities. Tron comes to mind as unique in blending digital and physical so directly. Later films like Matrix, Ready Player One, Existence portray separate realities. But what we see here feels novel. The same physical being transitioning between real and digital flawlessly, with borders between reality and virtual space erased. If that's close to Kane's core idea, credit where it's due, it's a fresh twist not widely seen in sci-fi. We've seen why Async created the Backrooms and how they shaped the initial design, to give humanity endless space. But through most of Kane Pixels' canon, we watched things go wrong in ways Async likely didn't foresee. Let's summarize what we know and what we can derive, why the Backrooms behave as they do, and what happens inside and outside of them. Async finally creates the threshold and opens what they call A-Space in the infomercial videos to direct access. A huge step towards offering infinite space to customers, but almost immediately things slip out of their control. Earthquakes, power outages, signal distortions are being reported across Northern California, home of Async research. The video collateral.mov implies that creating the threshold didn't just make one doorway, it tore open multiple uncontrolled pathways between reality and the Backrooms. Async eventually calls these points null zones, and they try to hide the phenomenon. Marvin, one of the researchers, voices a key concern in Pitfalls.
But what if Miller's right about the null zones?
We see null zone behavior reflected in the rise in missing persons after 1989 in the video Missing Persons, the vanishing car on the highway, and of course the 3 found footage disappearances. I assume null zones can appear and vanish anywhere, any size, any duration. In found footage 2, the threshold width seems to shift from a few centimeters marked on the floor to a sudden drop for the female protagonist. In this context, the original meme phrase fits perfectly. People, no clipping out of reality. Null zones are invisible to the human eye, yet sound can pass through them. We see this in the infomercial video where Peter Tench leaves his group after hearing voices from elsewhere in the Backrooms. And in found footage 3, where Ravi communicates with the father behind a wall inside a house-like area. Think of null zones like bubbles or membranes appearing and growing inside our reality, momentarily opening a temporary threshold to the Backrooms, then vanishing with potentially harmful consequences. Why do null zones appear, and why are they so volatile? My explanation centers on the green glow. We see the green glow multiple times, and it always coincides with a major change in the Backrooms. First in the video Overflow in 1972, hinting Ivan Beck's involvement in the early discoveries of the research that later becomes the Backrooms. The birth moment, in a sense. We also catch a green glow when Async uses the lab rig to digitize the small silver object. In First Contact, the green glow is emitted from the forming threshold. A striking instance appears at the end of found footage 2. The female protagonist is trapped in a dead end as an entity chases her. Walls grow green, cracks form, the hallway widens, and then the footage cuts. In Pitfalls, Marvin steps through the door behind the holes in the ground, a green glow lingers from inside, and he's speechless at what he sees. Later, in Static Dead End, we glimpse the aftermath. A female colleague quotes,
"Well, Mark didn't say anything about it flowing in a specific direction, but he did say that it was, remember, pretty horizontal in nature. It was stretching off around the corner.
The yellow wallpaper looks stretched, like using a photo editor to smear pixels across an image. Whenever we see the green glow, it appears to manipulate space, most likely the backrooms extending. I suspect this is Async upgrading the backroom's capacity, assigning more technical or electronic resources to the device housing the backrooms, or at least manipulating it as part of their ongoing research. As seen for example in First Contact, when the backrooms are connected to our reality for the first time. In other terms, add more quote-unquote disk space and the backrooms can occupy more virtual volume, visualized by the green expansion. But as the series shows, the backrooms become chaotic the farther you get from the original threshold and the older the area is. Initially, behind the first threshold, rooms are open, square, maximizing usability, clearly by design. Further out, expansion produces random rooms, deformed layouts, objects with no context. In Static Dead End, the area reads as a new room with weird shapes and scattered objects. Compare Found Footage 3, which takes place years after Found Footage 1, to earlier footage. The later video shows more diverse room designs and a higher volume of scattered objects. I believe these errors and mutations are byproducts of technical limitations of the 80s and 90s systems. Not like today's SSDs and stable processors. The complex tries to populate new space with purposeful content, but can only duplicate what's already stored. With each copy-paste, errors accumulate, data quality degrades and defects multiply. Chaotic geometry, out-of-place items, misshapen objects, like for example the deformed chairs in Found Footage 2 or the wheelbarrows in infomercial video. Another hint is given by Lighting Survey. Async analyzes ceiling lights from the backrooms. They look like real-world components, but measurements show they're only close, not exact. Strong evidence that the backrooms alter and mutates whatever data it stores or comes in contact with. And it doesn't stop here. As mentioned by many, I too believe the complex also copies objects it comes into contact with via the random null zones. Clearly that's unwanted if Async wants to reliably store products. And there's one more effect, the weirdest and most unexpected of all. We'll come back to it. What exactly the backrooms are and where they sit in reality isn't fully explained. But if Async's world follows the same physics as ours, they must be man-made. This theory tries to tie loose ends together, but ultimately only Kane can confirm what the backrooms really are. Now, the most controversial topic, the entities. There's little hard evidence, which leaves room for speculation. The main theory says they are mutated bacteria, specifically Bacillus, developing on the bodies of deceased victims. But I have another theory, and I also think a crucial clue from the very beginning has been overlooked. Of course, the video autopsy report makes it easy to assume a bacterial origin. We see a doctor examining the partially decomposed body of Nicholas Bolton, one of the missing persons. But I don't think the bacteria are the entities. If the entities were single bacteria, their numbers would be in the millions, if not billions. We'd see them constantly. Or they would need to act as a hive mind, forming multicellular organisms. I believe the entities are still, at least in part, human. They are the original victims who got lost in the backrooms and mutated through its data erosion properties. Proof is that every time we see an entity, there are clear signs of human presence. In Found Footage 1, Kane encounters an entity near the wall with the cryptic writings. In Found Footage 2, the female protagonist meets an entity near the car crash site. In Found Footage 3, the entity, also called Still Life, chasing Ravi still looks mostly human. In Pitfalls, Marvin finds human traces, and there are hints that this entity can even, or still, recreate fragments of speech, shouting for help. Why do they mutate? Same principle as with the objects. Over time, data erodes in this aging system. Early victims cough as their organs start to change. With more time, appearance warps as in Found Footage 3. Later stage forms resemble the entities from Found Footage 1 and 2. Motor control degrades, movement becomes jerky and unnatural. Or another option, Like with any other objects, the backrooms may use humans to populate newly expanded space during green glow events. And each copy-paste step introduces more corruption, until the original is long deceased, leaving mutated derivatives behind, much like the misshapen chairs in found footage 2. We also don't fully understand what the backrooms does to their brains. Entities often chase humans, but we never actually see them inflict harm on camera. Understandably, their behavior and appearance easily scares whoever comes into contact with them, but they might not be inherently evil, just corrupted, confused, and driven by fragmented impulses, maybe panic. And here's the big one I think many miss. There's another entity, not the one from motion detected. I don't think that's an entity at all, but we'll come to this later on. I'm talking about the very first figure Kane encounters in found footage 1. Early in the video, Kane abruptly turns and we glimpse a figure vanishing behind the corner he just came from. Shortly after, it crosses his path again, quietly, lurking in the shadows without trying to approach him. All this before Kane meets the well-known impulsive chaser entity near the writings on the wall. During Kane's escape, he runs back towards his entry area, hides in the side corridor, and sees an entity carefully and quietly walking past. Many assume it's the same as the chaser entity, but it's not. The torso is more bent forward, leg and lower body proportions differ. Its movement, it's stiff, stomping, slow, quite the opposite of the screaming, rushing chaser entity. And the sound. At the dead end hole Kane is looking into, we suddenly hear a soft, almost questioning sound behind Kane, not a howl. He turns, drops the camera, and the final frame shows the entity holding Kane, preventing him from falling. This figure seems curious, shy, frightened, with a limited motor control. Maybe even playful, as I'm sure the chair that gets flung inside the corridor is tossed by the entity just because of pure boredom. I even believe we sadly know its name from Missing Persons. Alice White, the 2-year-old toddler. The behavior and movement fit a toddler tragically corrupted by the backrooms. That strongly suggests entities are remnants of humans, not bacteria, retaining fragments of emotions, communication and instinct. One more example, in found footage 3, the entity sounds even resemble "Where are you?" as if searching. And if we listen carefully, we could even come to believe that the entity in found footage 1 is asking Kane not to run away. So, contrary to the Hey Bacillus theory, there's compelling evidence the entities originate from humans. The emotional and communicative traces remain visible. In the backrooms, stay long enough and you risk being eroded and mutated by the system itself. It's safe to say Peter's disappearance blindsided AETHER, and they moved quickly to cover it up. The story that he panicked and hits his head while fleeing the facility is, in my opinion, fabricated, designed to stop questions. I think AETHER saw him as a threat to the project and liquidated him, framing as a self-caused accident. But Peter's case, as mentioned earlier, reveals a weird and unexpected property of the backrooms. We see events around Peter Tench unfolding while he's on an expedition with other researchers. He hears voices coming from an adjacent room and breaks from the route to investigate. As his colleagues pass by, he tries to alert them, and in a split second they're gone. I think Peter encounters a null zone, a momentary connection between the backrooms and the real world, allowing him to hear actual people. The voices weren't simulations, they were real. From Peter's perspective, no time passes, but everyone's gone. He tries to return to the threshold and finds the area changed. He accidentally triggers an alarm and is picked up by Async later on. We're told he was missing for more than 2 months, believed to be dead. During his absence, motion detected occurs. A camera captures a dark object moving near the threshold. Many say it's an entity, but look closely. The object seems rigid, unchanging. Trace the outlines and you see a pair of legs and an arm. It appears to float without touching the ceiling. My theory, this is Peter Tench, held in a limbo state by the Backrooms system. If the Backrooms run on a technical device, then a corrupted sector or lost link could have orphaned Peter's position data. The system keeps his data in cache, but without a valid address to place him. His body still takes up space, so the system moves him around without proper coordinates, until it can reassign him to a plausible location. By chance, Async's cameras catch him. Why didn't Async react immediately? At that point, they weren't yet aware of entities as we later see them. Marvin only encounters the first entity after the events of Pitfalls. Still, Async shuts down parts of the complex, treating the sighting as a potential threat. When Peter is found by the expedition team and Mark dies during those events, we see Peter in severe stress from prolonged exposure to the complex. There are signs of mental erosion. He's impulsive, on edge. Shortly after, Async claims he dies in an accident trying to run away. Whether that's true is debatable. Peter's case suggests the Backrooms have unwanted, uncontrollable properties, including a kind of forward time displacement that would only be possible if crossing the threshold transforms objects and people. My belief, crossing converts analog beings into digital data, making them vulnerable to system changes. Holding that data in a steady state could mimic time travel. If the Backrooms were purely spiritual or interdimensional, their reality would be fully fictional, but the technical framing explains the time jump in a way consistent with the physics as we know them. Hard to say where it's leading all up to. It depends on what we still get to see. The broken wall and window in Found Footage 3 suggest that as the real world leaks into the Backrooms may bleed into ours. Consequences? Unknown. Let's hope Async knows what they're doing. I hope I've sparked your interest and given you a few new angles to consider as we all try to solve the Backrooms mystery. Let's hope Kane keeps feeding us more clues. Thanks for watching.